Good afternoon. My name is Robert Ross. I'm a professor in the School of Kinesiology and Health Studies at Queen's University in Canada. And I'm here today with Dr. Frank Hugh, a professor of nutrition and epidemiology at the Harvard School of Public Health. Frank, given the extensive research that you've done over the years in the area of nutrition, obesity, and cardiometabolic health, I wonder if you can share with us some of the key findings that your work has unveiled with respect to determinants of abdominal obesity, for example.
Right. Yeah, it's a pleasure for me to be here. We have looked at many dietary and lifestyle factors. Clearly, diet quality is a very important determinant of abdominal obesity and type 2 diabetes. One of the factors we have examined very extensively is sugary beverages. As you know, consumption of sugary beverages is very high, and those beverages contain a lot of calories, a lot of sugar. Just give you a simple example. 1 can of soda contains about 10 teaspoons of sugar and 150 calories. So if you add just 1 can of soda to your diet every day, in 2 or 3 years, you will gain 10 kilograms. That's a lot of weight. And we know that obesity, especially abdominal obesity, is the most important risk factor for type 2 diabetes. So I think addressing the problem of abdominal obesity and type 2 diabetes, it's extremely important to limit the consumption of sugary beverages. And there are several healthy alternatives. One is water, because it doesn't contain any calories. So if you substitute water for sugary beverages, you can reduce your risk of obesity, abdominal obesity, and type 2 diabetes. Recently, we published a study on the benefits of substituting water for sugary beverages. And you can also have unsweetened tea or coffee, and those beverages have also been shown to have some beneficial effects on diabetes.
Right. I think those are very simple health messages for the public, that there's some very straightforward and simple ways to have a profound effect on reducing that waistline. I think it also goes very well with the notions that we know for physical activity as the other behavior, the other side of the energy balance equation for reducing the waistline. We now have, I think, very compelling evidence to suggest that increasing physical activity consistent with the guidelines, 150 to 300 minutes a week of moderate physical activity, has had a very clear positive effect on reducing waistline, reducing abdominal visceral fat, and then perhaps the downstream markers of visceral fat, in particular liver fat and epicardial fat. So I think the two health messages go well together, that we have very simple ones, decreasing the consumption of sugar-sweetened beverages and increasing physical activity consistent with the guidelines, and we have some very positive health messages there. Are there any other key findings that you've observed nutritionally over the years that you have also found have had a beneficial effect on the waistline and the associated cardiometabolic risk factors?
Yeah, that's a really important question, because some of the foods and the beverages that we have looked at are actually protective against weight gain and protective against abdominal obesity. I just want to give you some examples that we published recently. We found that people who consume more fruits and vegetables, more whole grains and more nuts and more yogurt, they actually have lower amount of weight gain and a lower risk of obesity. So those foods, they're very high in, some of the foods are high in fiber, and they have relatively low energy density, especially fruits and vegetables. And nuts, although they contain a relatively high amount of fat, most of the fats are healthy fats, monounsaturated fats and polyunsaturated fats, and nuts also contain high amount of fiber and protein. So those healthy foods can be used to reduce the risk of obesity, reduce the risk of weight gain, and in the long term, they can also be beneficial in preventing type 2 diabetes.
Right. I wonder how we combine those messages, Frank. Certainly, for those of us who promote the activity side of the energy balance equation, we certainly encourage that about 50% of the diet be in the form of carbohydrate, because that's, of course, the fuel that we need to make sure we can engage in our physical activity properly. So if I'm prescribing a diet that says about 45 or 50% carbohydrate, what would be the nature of that carbohydrate that you would prefer to see us consume, so that we can both do the physical activity we need to do and have the quality of diet that would reduce those risk factors even further?
That's a really excellent question. The quality of carbohydrate, or the type of carbohydrate, is probably more important than the total amount of carbohydrate in terms of long-term metabolic disease risk. So our study and many other studies have shown that high-quality carbohydrates from whole grain products, from no glycemic index products, and also from legumes are beneficial in terms of glucose response and insulin response. And in the long run, those products not only provide fuels for people who are exercising regularly, but also can have long-term benefits on insulin resistance and type 2 diabetes. So again, I think we should emphasize on the quality of carbohydrates and the type of carbohydrates. And for people who are exercising regularly, of course, their carbohydrate intake need to be adjusted to their activity levels.
Right, I think that's such an important message to get across to abdominally obese individuals who are leading a sedentary lifestyle and consuming a poor diet at this point. I think the take-home message from our combined work is twofold. One, you can make some very simple changes, some very straightforward, simple changes to your diet and have a profound effect. And at the same time, you can increase physical activity consistent with the guidelines very, very simply. And I think our message is that you need to do the two. To isolate one of those behaviors to get optimal benefits is not the best strategy. I think we would agree that combining those two behaviors in a way that's simple, straightforward, can be maintained for a lifetime is our take-home message today. So, hopefully that's been informative to you. On behalf of Dr. Frank Yu from Harvard and myself, good afternoon.